Go ahead.
Today we're going to demonstrate how to hive a 3-pound package of honeybees into a top bar hive. And we're starting this year. I wanted to make this video to give you some instruction before the bees came. So I don't have any live bees to demonstrate with, but I rounded up some old equipment, and I hope you can kind of get the idea of how to install a package of bees. Now, there's a few basic tools you'll want to start with and have ready before you even start. One of them would be the candy plug or a marshmallow, and we'll explain what that's about. I like to use a little grabber screw of some sort that will explain the use of that, as well as a thumbtack. Comes in handy, or even a piece of tape will work. You'll also want to have your feeder ready, whichever kind of feeder you're going to use. This is a entrance feeder. It will go in the entrance of the hive. If you have an inside feeder, or some people use a Ziploc bag on the top of the hive. There's several different ways to feed your bees, but you'll want to have that ready to go also. I also like to use a little pump sprayer. You can use the squeeze type. This type works good with a 1-to-1 sugar solution in it. And you can spray that on your bees. It'll calm them down, and it'll actually, with a package of bees, it'll work better than smoke will work to calm the bees. But now I'll just kind of go through, and if you can kind of use your imagination, that we have live bees in this box. This is similar to what your bees will come in. Again, I just wanted to get this video off so you had an idea of how to do it. And then when we get a package of bees, we'll film it again, so next year we'll have live bees. But once you have all of your little things gathered up, you'll want to start in with your hive. Take the lid off of your top bar hive, and what I've done is I've put about 8 bars on the front near the entrance, and this is where you'll start your hive. And then in the back of that would be the follower board, which is put in. So we've reduced the size of the hive down to just 8 bars. The rest of this is just going to be empty for now, and we'll expand that later in the year. But to start out with, put your 8 bars. You could go a little bit bigger if you wanted, but just as a rule, this works pretty well. Then what I do is take the 3 center ones out, maybe towards the front, and this is where we'll put the bees down in. So once you have all that ready, you'll get your package of bees. And what you have here is of course the box will be full of bees, and then there's this can of sugar water, of syrup, that the package supplier puts in there to feed the bees so they have something to eat while they're in transit. It'll come with a queen, which would be suspended in here, like that. And if you receive yours through the mail, sometimes they'll have a board over this to keep this lid from coming out. There's a few different designs, but it's all basically the same concept on how you install your package. So starting from the beginning, you have your bees. This is full of bees. They'll be all congregated on the top and hanging from the top of this box. So you can just gently bump this down a little bit to shake the bees down to the bottom. And then with your hive tool, if you need, you can pry this loose, and it's generally a pretty snug fit. So you can just kind of put it over to the side, and then if you'll notice, the queen cage has a little tab, a little metal tab here that holds the queen inside this. Now when you pull this out, it's going to have a lot of bees on it, and you don't want to shake that queen much. Just gently brush them off with your glove, with a bee brush, whatever you have. A piece of grass works well also. But the way our packages are going to come is there will be a cork in here. So you'll have the queen in there, and then there will be a cork that holds her in there, so she's not in with the general population of bees. But what we need to do is we need to delay the time that she's released into the general population of bees, and that's done with this candy plug. So what I like to do is to remove this cork. That's where the grabber screw comes in. You can screw that into the cork and then gently pull it out. But make sure that the queen doesn't get out, so you'll want to put your finger over it. What I like to do before I pull the cork out is make sure she's kind of pointing forward, away from the opening in the hole. But if you pull this cork out and you're not paying attention, the queen could fly away, and if you don't get her back, then your package will fail. So you've got to have that queen. So that's probably one of the most important things, is that you don't let that queen escape. So once you have the cork pulled out, you've still got all the majority of the bees are in there. Of course, you'll want to be suited up and everything at this point. I forgot to mention that at first. But you can take this candy plug and just insert it in the end, something like that. It doesn't need to go all the way in. What this is doing is it's a candy plug. The worker bees will eat at that plug. Once the candy's gone, they'll release that queen. That'll take them a few days, so it gives them a chance to kind of make themselves a home and establish their hive here, and it'll help the odds of them accepting that queen. There's a lot of different instructional videos on direct release of queens, and that can be done, but this is kind of what we recommend that seems to work the best. Okay, so back to installing the package. Once she's in there, you have the candy plug. What I like to do is insert a screw or a nail in the end of that. I don't know if you can see it from there, but what you're wanting to do is create kind of a little hole. It's small enough that she can't come out immediately, but it's big enough that it kind of encourages the worker bees to start eating that candy and releasing the queen. So you just make a small hole, a small diameter nail, no more than an 1/8 inch in diameter, just a small hole to get them started. So now that you have that, you can set your package over. Your queen's ready to go in. This is where the thumbtack comes in handy. A piece of tape or a piece of wire, really anything will work. I like the thumbtack idea. What I do is take this first bar in the opening and thumbtack that on there. So so the queen's now suspended. The candy plug's towards the bottom, so when she's released, she'll come out in that big group of bees. Then at that point, you just simply pull this off. You'll probably have a lot of bees congregated here. You can shake this down in the box, and then you can just simply start shaking the bees out. You don't have to get real rough with it. You don't have to get every bee out. The important thing is the queen's in there and a good bunch of bees are in there. Then you can just take this box and put it somewhere near the hive, and then over the next few hours, all the bees will kind of announce this is where the hive is, and they should fly in there. Sometimes you'll get a little bit of drip from the can, a little drip syrup in the bottom of there, and the bees will stay in there and feed on that, or even feed on this. I recommend that you take this out of your bee yard once you've installed your bees, just encourage your bees to make this home and not come back to the can. But once you do all that, just simply close the hive back up by putting your top bars in. You can slide your follower board up. Take all this away and just put your lid back on the hive. If you haven't already done so, you can fill your feeder up and give those bees some feed. It's very important with the package that you feed the bees, because they have no resources other than what's in their tummy when they're put in there, and so you want to give them some resources. A 1-to-1 sugar mix is great. Feed them until you can tell that they're bringing in their own nectar. In a dry year, that'll be a little bit longer than in a wet year, of course, but just make sure they have plenty of feed and let them do their work. The next thing you would do after you install this is, if you wait probably 2 or 3 days, I would recommend 3 days, you can come back and just quickly pull that queen cage off and make sure she has been released. If she's still in the queen cage, just quickly put it back together and wait a few more days. Some people like to get in real quick to pull that queen cage out. With the top bar hive, sometimes if that queen cage is in the way on those bars, they like to build their comb around it, and it will cause for crooked comb. So if that's a concern you have, you could get in there somewhere around 3 days after you install the package, but don't spend a lot of time in there. And then once that's done, if you decide to pull the queen cage out, do that. But then you need to wait, I'd recommend at least a week, 10 days. You can go back and check for eggs and see if your queen's laying. But it's best not to disturb them too much in that first week or even 2 weeks until they get established and get things going. But I think that's pretty much it. Thanks. Okay, today I wanted to demonstrate how to install a 3-pound package of honeybees inside of a top bar hive. And our package bees haven't come in yet this year. They'll be coming this weekend, but I wanted to kind of make a demonstration video so you had some idea of what to do, and maybe it'll answer some of your questions. Next year we'll do it with live bees, but if you can use your imagination today, we're just going to use some old equipment that I have, and I'll show you the basic concept of how it works. Before you suit up and before you open your bee package and get into it too deep, you'll want to round up a little bit of equipment, just some basic tools. One thing I like is the candy plugs you can get. Some packages will come with these. Some bee suppliers already have the candy plug with their queen, but I'll kind of cover that as we get into that. But as far as equipment, you need a candy plug, a marshmallow works if that's all you have, a thumbtack, a small grabber screw, a spray bottle with a 1-to-1 sugar syrup solution, and then your feeder, whatever type of feeder you're going to use. This is an entrance feeder, but whatever kind of feeder you're going to use, if you put your feed in that, your 1-to-1 sugar water, and have that placed in your hive, ready to go before you start, then you don't have to worry about remembering to get it in there. The pump sprayer, you can use a little squeeze type, but I'll use this to calm the bees. If you spray this through the mesh and on the bees, it'll settle them down, give them something to do, and they lick that syrup off of each other, and it'll have a calming effect, and it'll help you. It'll do a lot more good with a package of bees than smoke will at this point. And then of course you need your package of bees. And if you can kind of imagine that there's bees in there, you'll still get the same idea. Okay, once that you have all your equipment together, your hive feeder in there, you can set your bars up. What I've done here is I've put 8 of the top bars in, just to give us a little bit of space, and then put the follower board in the back. And what we're doing here is just restricting the size of that hive down just a little bit smaller. That'll encourage them to start building comb toward the front of the hive, and they just don't need that much space for a little while. As the season goes on, we'll move this space back. We'll move the follower board back and increase the space. But for now, 8 bars works really well. Next, what I do is just pull out 3 of the bars, just to give us a little bit of space. This is where we're going to install our bees. So now the hive's all ready. Again, you've got your feed ready. All your equipment's rounded up. Now would be a good time to get dressed in your bee suit, your veil, gloves, whatever protective clothing you're comfortable with. At this point, of course, we don't have live bees, so I'm just doing it like this so you get an idea of what's going on. When you get your bees, sometimes they will come. They'll have a board over this can. Some of them don't. It's just a little bit different depending on where you buy them. But what this can is it's more sugar syrup that the package supplier has put in there to give the bees something to eat while they're in transit. If there's a board across this holding that can in place, you want to take your hive tool, pry that board off, and then you'll be able to pull this can out. The next step is to just gently shake the bees down. You don't have to slam them real hard, just to get a lot of them to fall off the top and get them away from this can. Then you can use your hive tool, remove the can, just gently pull it out. There'll be bees flying by this point, and you just kind of gently pull it out. Be a lot of bees probably congregated on the bottom. You just kind of shake them off there, or even shake them down into the box. But I like to do that fairly quick. But what you're after is you're trying to get this queen cage out. The queen's going to come in a little wood block like this with the screen on it. She's in there by herself. Sometimes she'll have some attendant bees. It just kind of depends on how the supplier sends them to you. But the idea here is to pull this queen out fairly quickly, close this back up, and then prepare the queen to be installed. You can brush your bees off down in the hole here. Most likely this will be covered with a lot of bees. Just kind of take your time, brush the bees off. Don't shake her. You don't want to jostle that queen too much. Most all queen suppliers are going to send their queen, and it's going to have a cork in here, and that's just a plug to keep the bees from releasing the queen until they're established in the hive. Some of them will have behind that cork, they'll have a candy plug, and it's different with different suppliers, but I'm going to show you just in case there's not a plug in there. You need to be prepared for that. So this is where the screw comes in effect. I use it just like a corkscrew in a wine bottle. You just screw it into the cork and gently pull that out. While doing this, you want to make sure you put your finger over the end of the hole so the queen doesn't escape at that point. A good technique with that is to make sure she's facing forward when you do that. There's a chance she could still turn around, but you just want to make sure she doesn't get out and fly away before you install her in the package. Otherwise your package probably is not going to work out. So that's the most important thing, is just don't let her escape. So once you've got the cork out, she's still in there, she looks good and everything, you can quickly install this candy plug just like that. If you don't have the candy plug, a good gob of a marshmallow can go in there. What we're doing is we're trying to delay the time that she's released. So what will happen is the worker bees will come in and eat that candy away and release that queen, but in the few days it takes for them to eat the candy away and release her, they're kind of making this home, they're starting to build some comb, and the likelihood of them accepting the hive there as their new home is much better if you delay the release of that. Another thing you need to do with the candy plug, especially these larger size ones, is push your screw in the end of it and create a small hole all the way through the queen. What this does is it just gives them a little bit of a head start to start drilling that, or to start eating that hole and eating that candy out of there, and kind of gives them an idea of what's going on there. You don't want the hole big enough that the queen can escape immediately, but just a small nail hole will work just fine. I would do that in the marshmallow as well as the candy plug. Okay, once you've got the queen ready, the candy plug in there, the cork out, you want to make sure that you take the cork out. That's pretty important too. But what I do is just take your thumbtack now and put it in the center of this top bar. It's going to work. Bent my thumbtack. The idea of the thumbtack is just to hold that queen cage in place until you can get the bees installed, and so it doesn't fall on the bottom. There's many different ways of installing a queen. Some people don't use the candy plug, they just direct install them, and that works for some people, but we really recommend this way, especially for beginners. It just increases your chances of them accepting the queen and her not escaping before they establish their hive. One thing that some people don't like about this is, with this cage in the way, that does encourage them possibly to start building crooked comb. If you're worried about that, I would get back in the hive after about 4 days and quickly remove that. Check to see if the queen's been released. If she has been released, just quickly remove the cage, the empty queen cage, and then leave them alone for a little while. If she hasn't been released, put it back in there and come back in 3 or 4 more days. But generally, I just leave it in there until I do an inspection after 10 days to see if she's laying. Once in a while, they will start building some crooked comb, but it's fairly easy to remedy at that point. Okay, so once the queen is suspended there, you can take your bees. Like I say, they'll be flying at this point, but you just simply shake them down into that hole. You don't have to get every bee inside there, you just want to get the majority of them. And then there'll probably still be some bees in here. There'll probably be some dead bees in the bottom of there, which is, it's normal to have a few dead bees in there, so don't be alarmed by that. But you can just set the cage, the shipping package, on the ground near the entrance of the hive, and the rest of the bees that are in there will find their way in. They'll send a signal out that the queen is in there and that they need to, this is where the new home is, so they'll all come in there. So don't worry too much about getting every single bee. Next thing you'll do is just simply put the top bars back in, close the hive up, and you're done as far as installing them. Again, I mentioned it before, you'll want to get back in there in about 10 days and check to see if the queen is laying and how she's laying, and just make sure everything's going okay that way. But leave it alone as much as possible till they've got a little bit of brood going. Keep plenty of feed on them, and they should do really well.